Newsnight, now on BBC Two with Emily Maitlis.
They start out as ordinary girls. By the time they're finished, they're hollow. Tonight, a harrowing story of modern-day slavery and the darker side of Oxford. Victims tortured by their abusers, then failed by services that should have protected them.
I started to go to guest houses and to London and places like that to see other men, and I was told it was doing them a favour, and I was still under the illusion that they cared about me and they were my friends.
We asked the Director of Public Prosecutions what went so badly wrong. And as 7 Asian men are found guilty of horrendous abuse, we ask if race and religion played any part in this crime. Also tonight,
we're likely to see more of these cases in the near future.
Keir Starmer, thanks very much indeed. Well, Joanna Simons is head of the Oxfordshire County Council. She joins me now, and in a moment we'll be speaking to Mohammed Shafiq of the Ramadan Foundation, Alaz Kamani, Director of Street UK, an organisation that educates and empowers teenagers, and Sue Brelevitz, the Deputy Children's Commissioner. So welcome to you all. If I can start though.
Well, I think it's important to recognise that as we have Tia Sharp's step-grandfather being sent to prison for a very long time. We see the Jimmy Savile, we see North Wales Children's Home. You know, that these child sexual abuse affects all communities. But it's very important to recognise, as members of the Pakistani community, we've got a problem. There are some criminals who think that white girls are worthless. They think they can be used and abused in this abhorrent sort of way. I've been following this case, and what we've got to do as a society is all take some responsibility and try to come down to what the real reasons are. So as a community,
what do you think those are?
Well, as I've said, there is some people, some of these criminals, who think white girls are worthless. But equally, there are Asian victims. I've met in the last few weeks Asian victims who don't have the evidence to come forward to give evidence. So it affects all communities, and we have to be very careful in the language that we use. But we, as members of the Pakistani community, have got some responsibility to speak out. You know, anybody who's followed this trial and the facts of this case, as a parent, all of us, we should be horrified by it, and there should be no safe hiding place anywhere in any part of our country for these evil men.
Alaz Kamani, would you go that far?
Well, you know, I think it's important to recognise there is a problem in the Pakistani community, but just as Sue has said and Mohammed Shafiq has said, it's a problem which I think is actually a global problem, and I think it's a crisis of masculinity. What we're having is a profound problem across the whole of society, where men do no longer know how to respect and value women, and we find increased sexual violence being perpetrated against women and children. And one of the things that we found in our work with young men from all backgrounds, black, white, Asian, Muslim, non-Muslim, is that there is this profound disrespect culture. There's a rape culture that's developed where rape is seen as something which is trivial. And people even talk about it in a very trivial sense. We're going to rape that girl, we're going to abuse that girl.
How do you think, I mean, what do you think is the root cause for that change in culture, or the lack of masculinity now?
Well, I think we've gone back decades in terms of basic human rights and basic values around respecting women. One of the factors, amongst many factors, is the fact that young men now are immersing themselves in watching violent, degrading, humiliating pornography, where often the genre is about rape. Now, young men, their primary educator, it seems, is the street, is the internet, and are these really negative role models who are involved in organised crime groups on the street. And we're not even engaging young men at all. So if we want to be preventative, we've got to get into schools as young as 9, 10, 11, because we've found patterns of young men grooming girls in school at that very age, because it's become a paradigm for these young men and these children to groom in this particular way.
Sue Brelevitz, do you think that is happening? Do you think you're able to get to these young men before the internet does?
Well, clearly not. And one of the things we are going to be talking to government about over the next few weeks is that we actually want much more focused PSHE lessons in schools, where there are actually people feel from within the primary phase that it's possible to talk about things like pornography, how to build resilience in young children in terms of what they're looking at on the internet. It's very, very important to do that. At the same time, I would say we actually don't know if what's happening today is worse than in previous eras, simply because the evidence has not been identified before. So the work that we did in the Office of the Children's Commissioner last year in terms of identifying prevalence is the first time a baseline has ever been set for this.
Mohammed Shafiq, we're getting almost two opposing views, because there was a voice in the film that said it's about shame, it's about covering up, particularly within a Muslim culture, a Pakistani community, and yet the point that we've just heard is actually that it's everywhere, that actually it's more acceptable, and that rape is being seen, you know, as soon as you're 2 clicks away. I mean, what do you think is the...
Well, I mean, I've been campaigning against this since 2006. So when I first started, I was a lone voice within the Pakistani community and in wider society. But actually, I think the catalyst was Rochdale, where people have now started taking this seriously, and the members of my community speaking out.
And when Jack Straw made those comments, did you find that offensive or did you find it helpful?
I found it offensive because Jack Straw is former Home Secretary, former Justice Secretary, but he never did anything when he was in government. And then suddenly he made this fleeting statement which tarnished the whole community. You know, I take my responsibility seriously, and my community takes its responsibility very seriously. But I think it's now time for those agencies that have failed these children. You know, the catalyst, and I think those agencies have got to take some responsibility.
Quickly to Sue, and I'm going to ask you this, if you don't mind, while Keir Starmer's here. Keir Starmer's tenure will end in October. What are the most essential, critical things that he can do before he leaves office in October?
Well, happily, he has begun to do them. He's made extremely strong statements about the importance of believing children when they come forward. Children don't make neat disclosures. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So when information begins to come out from them, people have to believe them, the police have to believe them, the local authorities have to believe them. And to the credit of Oxfordshire County Council, I obviously heard what you said earlier, and Thames Valley Police, despite the failings initially, once they got going, they really devoted tremendous resources to seeing this case through.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thanks for coming in.